What's up, everyone? We're back. I'm Dr. Shah.
Dr. Maxfield.
Welcome back to Dr. Lee Unhinged with our unhinged takes. And this is our last episode of the year. We'll be back for season 3 in about a month or so. And we're going to recalibrate for season 3. Our goal is to bring on some more interesting guests, ask some of the tough hitting questions, and really go deeper. You know, I think for a long time, Dr. Maxfield and I, we covered a lot of broad topics. But I think we want to go deeper on some of these topics. We want to get into the nuances. I think the audience is ready for a little bit of a deeper deep dives on things. So we're going to go into the nuances. Next year is going to be the year we're going to be knocking down some segments we haven't previously touched on, like lasers and Botox and fillers, like the nuances of these things, the questions that a lot of the audience has, and there's not really good answers there. So big 2025 year coming forward. And to start off the episode, just want to say thank you to all of you for your support, following us along through the podcast, and many of you following us on YouTube, the larger channel, TikTok, and Instagram. As TikTok is likely to go away, please follow us on other platforms so you can continue to get our information. And let's get into it.
Yeah, no, just want to echo that sentiment. It's been a roller coaster of a year. I can't think of how many changes have happened this year, like personally, professionally. And so I do want to just also take a moment and say thank you to all of you who've been a part of this, even now, like even with script, like it's been a bumpy road, to be honest. And there's been so much there have been so many people like who have just doubled down on their support and just their positivity. And trust me, we're going to try to take care of you. We're going to take care of you. But I just want to say thank you to all of you for being a 100%. Part of this too. Like it's humbling. It's very humbling.
Huge year. Yeah. We should do some type of recap or something. Like a maybe for the larger channel where it's like just a year in review for Dr. Lee, where we started, where we are between script, remedy, me having a daughter, big life update, all these things, you launching the practice in Tennessee. So much happened in 1 year. So let's see what 2025 has in store. So, all right, let's go into life update. Anything new for you? Or that was our life update?
Life update. I guess we could say, for those of you, we have 2 new products launching on script. As always, podcast. This is almost like the, what's the thing on YouTube? Starts with a P, where you pay Patreon. This is almost like the Patreon of the YouTube channel because you always get like the new information here first. But 2 new launches, super excited. You follow me on Instagram. You kind of already know what one of them is. But basically, we'll be solving the issues of like the best retinoid of all time. We'll be solving your redness, your flushing, your central facial blemishes, which I'm really excited about because all of you who have commented on, mostly it's TikTok as usual, but like, oh, your skin's looking rough this year, Dr. Maxfield. It can't be helped. I struggle with a very difficult skin condition called rosacea. But anyway, so super excited for those to come out. We're just days away actually from these being public facing, and I think they're going to be very impactful for a lot of people.
All right. So adding to tretinoin is maybe a more powerful retinoid, some may say, could be debated, and potentially a rosacea treatment. So stay tuned for that. In our world, we decided to kind of pull back a little bit on remedy from, the marketing. We thought that, the holidays were hot and heavy with, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So we personally were feeling a little bit of fatigue, but we got a new product launch coming in January, which I think is going to be extremely disruptive. And then we're going to kick it off with another product launch in March. So we got a big year ahead on remedy. And all is good. We took our baby for the first trip, road trip, 4-hour drive that turned into a 6-hour drive with the stops to Key West. And it was really nice. She actually really enjoyed being outside and like by the water, and actually it was like extremely cooperative. So it was actually really, really nice. And now she's starting to smile, which is really cute.
Oh, yes. That's like the best benchmark is that social smile. It's like, it's so beautiful. Also, I'm going to say that this next remedy launch, which I think has been delayed because you told me it was going to come out sooner, and then your wife told me it's going to come out later. But this is the one I've been waiting for. So audience, just so you know, this is my potentially favorite remedy product coming out soon. It's been in the works for freaking ever. And I cannot wait for this one to launch. It's going to get used by me quite a bit. So I'm super excited for this
It's
one.
a really interesting launch. I don't think a lot of people are going to expect what we're coming out with. I don't think anyone's going to guess it. If you could guess in the comments, I don't think you're going to guess it. But you could try, and I'll let you know. All right, so let's get what product of the day. I'm gonna seed on this one because I didn't try anything new this week enough to give a strong opinion. So I'll just defer to you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I I'm kind of disappointed because I don't think I had tried this when we made like the best cleanser of the year video. So I'm sorry. Bookmark this in. Maybe we'll have to Photoshop it in. But this one is the Lipicar. Maybe you did talk about this before. I don't know. But the Lipicar AP Plus wash. This is their gentle foaming moisturizing wash. I know we've talked about this before, maybe even on the podcast. So sorry if this is a repeat. But this wash is so good. Like if you take
It's
the
my
lather,
favorite from La Roche-Posay, to be
me
honest.
too. Is this new this year? Does this
No,
come
no,
out
no,
this
no.
year?
It's not. It's not. It's probably been 2 years, I would say, but it is such a nice cleanser. Like it's that in between. It really is that in between, right? Well, I'll let you go into it.
Well, that's exactly it. So like sometimes that big blue one, the foaming one, sometimes it is too harsh for my skin, especially as like my rosacea gets worse over time. I'm actually phasing out of that cleanser entirely. And I do not like the gentle cleanser. It still feels like rubbing lotion on your skin, just like the CeraVe one. So, but this is it exactly. Like this is the in between cleanser. I have a hard time imagining someone who would dislike this cleanser, whether you're dry, whether you're oily, whether you're acne, whether whatever. Like this is such a balanced cleanser on all fronts.
100%. 100% agree. It really is. It's got like a really nice foam, and you would expect it to strip, but it doesn't strip at all. So definitely a top, especially this time of the year. I think a lot of you are going to love this cleanser. So as far as topics today, we're going to be going over the trend list of the year and what we hope to take or think is going to take into 2025. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about Lindsay Lohan back in a movie. A lot of press about how she looks lately. And, we really don't like commenting on these things, but I think it speaks to a broader trend that I want to talk about. And that's the reason we're going to reference this popular culture event. And then Inkey List versus The Ordinary. According to Cosmopolitan, which is the best between the two of them? Is there a best between the two of them? Are they just the same? Who knows? And then finally, countries with the longest work weeks. How does the US stack up? How does your country stack up? We're going to be talking about who works the longest, who works the most, and what that means. And I'm also going to lend my opinion on how long I think the work week should be. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so the first topic is the viral skincare, viral trends. Not even just skincare, but some of the viral trends in 2024. I think there were a lot of unique ones this year, and so I took some time to try to compile all the ones I could remember, and now we'll run through them here. But the point of this is, are we keeping them? Are they here to stay? Are we chucking them? Where do you think these fall next year and in the future? So the first category, which is truly a category, it's masks. Like I don't know what happened this year in particular, but first there was the disappearing masks where you put it on dry on your face, you spray it with water, it disappears. Then there was kind of these came out at the same time, but the Korean masks, I think I have the ones from BioDance, really nice. But you put those on, you keep them on overnight, and they go from opaque to clear over a period of 4 to 6 hours. And then you have the Medicube one, which is kind of a standalone one because it's almost the opposite. That one is a gel that firms over time and then you peel it off. So really unique masks this year. I think they each bring something unique to the table. But for each of these, are you keeping them or are you throwing them away?
Okay, so the spray on collagen masks, I think we did a deep dive. Those are gone for sure. They just don't. I mean, the thing about some of these types of products, right? So for those of you who haven't seen this, it starts as white, you spray it, it disappears, right? Same thing with the Medicube mask and these other ones is that they're very visually appealing. And we live in a very digital first social system, right? Where like, if you can see it, it's exciting. And I think this is why the Ordinary Peeling Solution had done so well on early TikTok days. I think this is why makeup is doing so well on platforms like TikTok Shop, is because there's just a visual element to it that's very easy to show and can really capture someone's attention. I think it's also why the hair identifier spray had done so well. But particularly that collagen mask, it's really not going to do anything really that great for you that another product can't do for you. So that's first thing. I do like the Medicube mask. We mentioned this. I think there's something to it with that one. So I see that one continuing onward. Not for any particular reason, but I do sort of wonder if it has almost an effect because of the way that it sort of hardens on the skin. If you were to leave it on the skin overnight, is it going to have a similar benefit to something like a Frownies, but be a little bit more breathable? And
Hmm.
as a result, is it going to keep you from, grimacing too much in your sleep to really kind of like soften out the skin? I don't know. It's a good question. So that one, I kind of enjoyed that one quite a bit. So I think that one will continue. But I think those spray on collagen masks are gone.
Yeah, I agree. The collagen ones really have no benefit to dissolve. I love the Medicube one, except for the facial hair issue and the hair issue. For me, it's a nightmare to get out. I've worn this mask quite a few times. And then the Biodance one, I actually like those too. I think it's an improvement on slugging. So maybe I'd like to see those stay. I don't know if they will, but I do think they have good utility for damaged skin. Next up, does everyone remember this young lady? She is slightly orange, and she touts strongly that eating carrots is the best way to get a natural tan. And dermatologists didn't weigh in super strongly, and probably for good reason. But for you, is this a good thing, bad thing? Are we keeping it? Will we see more individuals utilizing this skin hack?
I think it's interesting. There's always something that comes up to make people, whether they're eating something or taking some supplement, or baking out in the sun, or tanning, or putting on iodine and baby oil. There's always somebody who's trying to figure out a way to get a tan. And I've seen some very extremely bad scenarios where it's terrible for your skin, and I've seen ones that are not so bad. I think eating a bunch of carrots, I mean, I think that your concern of like vitamin A overdose is so low that to me, it's probably fine. I don't think it's going to take off in the masses. I don't think this is something that's going to become widely adopted, but the carotene within the carrots giving you a little bit of that orange glow. I think there'll still always be a select group of people that will do it, but I don't see this getting into the mainstream. Let's put it that way.
I think you're right. And I don't know if it shouldn't go a little more mainstream. If this got more traction, it's kind of one of those things like, where's the harm? It's definitely a better option than sun tanning. Now that we do spray tanning in our office, I'd say it's comparable in safety to that.
How is this going, by the way? Can we get an update on this?
It's not the season.
For those of you who don't know, Dr. Maxfield has decided that in order to thwart those who want to get tan in the sun, in his dermatology office, he's decided to build a spray tan center. And I'm very curious to know how this is doing. You're right. It's not the season, but when is the season? I guess the sun season, but like year round, don't people want, like in the winter when you're getting no sun, isn't that the time where you're like, oh, I need to like reinforce my tan?
I guess it's true. I would certainly say like spring is where we're going to have the busiest time, but we're still revamping it, getting everybody trained up. So we do offer it. We have a couple of our team members who are very good at it, but really we haven't pushed it out there yet locally. But we will soon. I'm actually aesthetically repainting some of the walls to the whole. For those of you who don't know, I have like a very spacious area on part of my building, and so we're gonna dedicate part of this to the aesthetics of getting the spray tan, and they'll have a lot of space. It'll be a nice setup for them. So I would expect, though, I do expect in the spring we'll be pretty busy with spray tans.
All right, I'm excited for this.
The whole staff here, by the way, is progressively becoming shades darker. They're all calling it the Maxfield Brown, and they're all catching up to me with their spray tan practice. It's kind of funny.
I want to get a spray tan next time I come to see you.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll get you. They'll be ready. Wait, but you got to be naked.
But not like, can I just do it like in front of everybody?
What do you mean?
Like, I don't understand. Like, is it like like it's a private thing where I got to be naked, right?
Yeah. You just got to pick who's going to do it. It's not going to be me.
Wait, why do I got to be naked? Can I like
underwear? Like, what do you want tanned? You can't just do like your arms and your face.
Oh, So
I mean, you
somebody applies
can,
it
but
for you? I thought it was like a
yeah, yeah.
machine that
No,
applies
this
it.
is the handheld, the spray. This is the
Uh,
person one. No, I didn't buy a machine that you stand and turn. So this is a skill thing.
okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know
You want
about
to do
that.
it in
That's
front
a
of
little
everybody. There you
suspicious.
go.
That's a little suspicious. I don't know about this one yet. No, I might not do this. But anyway, no, thanks for the update there. What was the question? Oh, yeah, yeah. The carrots. No, it's not going mainstream.
Okay, so not going mainstream. Next up is this one's funny. So I'm posting individual videos on these on my social media, and I posted a recap of salmon sperm. So salmon sperm, for those of you who don't know, salmon and trout are relatively biocompatible with us. And so you can actually take their part of their gonads or something from the gonads, extract it, and it gives you things called polydeoxyribonucleotides. And these have been studied injectably, they've been studied topically, and they've been shown to have multiple benefits. I actually do think the dark circles benefits are pretty impressive from the pictures I've seen. This is not done in the US. This is a East Asia thing.
No, people are
And
doing it in the U.S. now, though.
interesting. Well, who?
Mm-hmm.
Doctors? Not that
Yeah,
they can't,
doctors. I've
but
seen like
okay.
doctors, like not like derms usually,
Hmm.
but I've seen people doing it in the U.S.
Okay.
Or I guess all like I'm assuming most of these videos are not happening in Korea that I keep seeing. So I think these are happening in U.S. offices.
Yeah, you're probably right. So I would say most of the videos I have seen, all the studies certainly are done not in America, but that's because that's where this originated from. And yeah, so anyway, the benefits may be there. It is what it sounds like in a sense. You do extract it from the gonads of these fish. Uh, and on paper, it could be helpful. So is the salmon sperm injection here to stay? Are we going to be seeing more doctors do this non-FDA approved procedure, which is fine. Like we all actually do a lot off label, or especially specialists. It's not unusual. Is this here to stay, or is this a passing craze?
Yeah, so I think this is here to stay at least for another year. I think this, and I don't know if you're going to go into like the whole exosomes thing. Imagine you might. These types of things, because they really have caught traction. The question is like, is it going to get widely adopted in the U.S. or not? What is the FDA going to say about this? And I think that's going to determine kind of the path forward. So if the FDA doesn't step in and try to regulate this or say this is like, because a lot of times they'll put out like position statements. They did this for exosomes where they said basically like there's no evidence or there's limited evidence that exosomes are safe and effective. And so a lot of people didn't really want to adopt this into their practice because of that sort of FDA ruling, which like didn't like prohibit people, I guess, from doing it. I mean, I think it just increased the risk for those who do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just never really became very popular to inject exosomes in the US or as popular as it is overseas. And so it will depend on what the regulatory bodies do to respond to this. So if there's no regulation that steps in, I imagine it's going to continue to trend upward. And if regulation steps in, then I think it will trend downward. So I think this is going to be one of those regulatory things.
Okay, so based on, though, I guess it depends on the FDA. Where does that in our governing bodies go? How risk averse are the medical professionals in the U.S. to incorporate this into their practice? Only time will tell. The comments were interesting. It's always very different comments on TikTok and Instagram. I think anyone who creates content knows this. But on Instagram, they were like appalled as if I invented and was doing this myself. They were like, "How dare you?" I was like, I'm just educating here, folks. Yeah, I'm not doing this. So anyway, salmon sperm, we'll see. Future unknown. And yeah, that does go into the next one, which was exosomes and then those needle serums. So exosomes, for those of you who don't know, basically, they can be formed in multiple ways. Sometimes they come from our cells, where you have these vesicular bodies that kind of bind to the cellular membranes. They form these little packages. And within these packages, you have functional components that can be helpful, whether it's growth factors, DNA, RNA, cell signaling molecules. And again, if you take these packages that are full of helpful beneficial ingredients, then you can apply them or use them in different ways for skincare. One of the ways they were delivered, though, this year were by microscopic needles in serums, specifically the more popular ones being from the Korean brands, the V-Shot, and then the, what's the Riedel Shot, I think was actually the name. And then Medicube came out with their version of it as well. We tried these. We did a video on it. Do you think the needle shots specifically are here to stay? Is this a new novel mechanism for improved absorption, or is this also going to pass?
I think this is going to pick up. So,
Mm.
and this is based on more of an educated response. I have some insider information, and I do think that there are companies who will make it a goal to bring this to the US and make it safer than using the sponge bicule version.
Mm.
And so I do think that this concept, right? Now, whether or not this is the one that actually takes off, right? So the whole concept here is that these needles, by creating little holes in the skin, help your products penetrate better. And I think that this concept of increasing the efficacy of your products through enhancing absorption is going to trend upwards next year,
Mm.
as it should. Now, whether or not this delivery mechanism, sponge spicules, is the one that takes off, TBD on that. But I think the concept of increasing penetration, whether it is through device like the microinfusion device or through a solution that pokes little holes in the skin, I think that this concept is going to blow up in 2025.
All right. So technology that's here to stay. How will we implement it? So I do agree though too. So basically absorption is a primary barrier to a lot of the effectiveness ingredients. If you enhance that, just the absorption alone can be beneficial. If you mechanically introduce needles into the skin, that alone has synergistic benefits. And so I could see this. I will say the 100 Riedel shot is more comfortable than that 750 Medicube we tried. The discomfort is definitely proportionate to the concentration of the needles. The other side of this too, so talking about increased absorption, does go to one of the more notorious or notariable devices that came out this year, and that was the Medicube Age R Booster Pro. So this device, I feel like, does deserve a special mention because it did have quite a bit of attention, at least for a moment this year. Was this the groundbreaking device that we've all been waiting for? Is this going to stay, or is this also going to go away, or is it going to be replaced? Is there a better way to do what this thing is trying to do?
We actually talk about this in our best innovations of the year, right?
Yes,
So
which is not live yet.
Yeah, so that's not live yet. So TBD on that. We're going to do a deeper dive on that particular device. But yeah, I think the concept is going to continue to do well. Medicube was very successful because of TikTok Shop. So if TikTok gets banned in January, I think it's going to be hard because the device does so many things. It's hard to communicate its benefits through short form content.
Mm-hmm.
And lives was a way for people to do deeper education, try to explain to you why you might want it or how to use it. And I think it was very successful in that modality. So I don't know that Medicube will do as well in a world where TikTok Shop is banned. But I think people will find another outlet for this type of content anyway. So we'll see how the world rearranges itself after January.
Yeah, and this device in particular. So the funny thing is, let's say, is it increases absorption through something called electroporation. Again, we'll have a longer segment on YouTube about this. But the thing that was visually appealing, and the reason it still could succeed on its own, even without any sort of like meaningful long discussion, is because the EMG moves your facial muscles for you. That just looks weird. So I think that is actually an attention getter, even if that is not the most beneficial thing about this device. So it could probably live on despite some of the difficulties it's going to face over the next year. And then next one is also on the trend of perhaps improved absorption, keeping them together. Tretinoin for hair growth. I have so much to say about this. We probably need to do a video on this. Actually, I know that hair growth is going to be something we discuss at length here in the future, as that's a big passion for both of us. But tretinoin for hair growth, what are your thoughts?
I mean, tretinoin for hair growth only in the presence of minoxidil, really, and other treatments that simulate hair growth. So, tretinoin acts almost as a penetration enhancer in this role, putting it on the scalp. There are also some benefits to kind of like reorganizing collagen, maybe improving vascular supply, normalizing the epithelium. So, there are benefits to potentially maybe unclogging some of the follicles. There could be other benefits, right? But the main benefit that this has been studied in is when you use tretinoin, with other ingredients that have been shown to help with hair growth, like minoxidil. But I wouldn't just use I wouldn't just take my retinol up to my hairline by itself. Like I just don't think the evidence is there, and I don't think there's anything to support that.
Right. I think this is the most misunderstood trend of 2024. I actually kind of get worked up about it. It kind of pisses me off, but because I see professionals do it too. Like, I'm guilty of this as well. Like in short form, I don't provide the nuance that I probably always should, but it's not that hard to caveat the essence of how tretinoin works for hair loss, even in short form content. It's like a quick 1-2 punch. And even our colleagues leave that out. I think it's extremely important nuance, and it's led to a very poor understanding of how this works.
I think that there is a real lack of nuance on social media that gets dangerous, like where, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, especially in short form content, and we see our colleagues doing this as well. So no shade to anybody, but sometimes like that detail is extremely important to not either ask mention something that someone's going to go then do and it's going to be dangerous, or there's some type of nuance where like someone's going to think something's like a miracle when it's not, because you're missing like one important factor. Another example of this is when people say, oh, if you take oral niacinamide, it's going to decrease your risk of skin cancer. But it really is only in people who are high risk for skin cancer, meaning that they've like had skin cancer before or like have other high risk factors. It's shown that niacinamide can decrease the risk of non-melanoma skin cancers like squamous cell skin cancer. But niacinamide alone has not been shown to do that for like a regular person that's relatively medium or low risk for skin cancer. And so the reason why I say that is that what you'll see is some professionals and other content creators say, hey, I recommend that everyone takes a niacinamide supplement to reduce your skin cancer. And now you're just taking a supplement you don't need, right? And I'm very much against doing things you don't need to do, because I think that doing things you don't need to do just increase your risk of, harm, right? Now, if you take niacinamide and you combine it with like polypodium leucotomus and other ingredients, like fine, right? Because then, there are some protective benefits of polypodium for everybody, right? That everybody could benefit from. But to do that just as like alone, I think it's just I think it's a lazy recommendation at the very least.
Nice. And so we're also going to be diving into this. We already kind of have obviously mapped out early 2025, if you can't tell, because we're also going to be diving into some of that in depth too, because it's an extremely important conversation to have in terms of like which supplements are a scam, which have some legitimacy. And we said it in passing, but we've never anchored that anywhere that's easy to reference. So, next up, of the millions of Botox alternatives, flaxseed Botox, where you basically make flaxseed goo, put it on your face, and all of a sudden it's Botox. Is that going to stay? Is that
it's already gone. Flaxseed is still going to be very popular in the diet, though.
Yeah, which I'm all for. Like I have flaxseed.
It's already gone.
That's already gone. Yeah, that's moments past. Okay. Who knows? Now this one is it'll probably come back once more at least, maybe, but. Next one. So this was a huge industry push. I didn't participate, and there are some special caveats to this. Like there are some products that can be useful, but whole body deodorant, where does this fall? Like this was a huge push this year to make this concept work. And I mean, across so many big companies, I actually don't understand like who was first. Like I feel like they collectively got together and said, this is the product this year, everybody. Or they're going to roll it out.
Yeah, we've had discussions about this before. You can't get me on board this concept. The idea of like whole body deodorant. Like, first of all, like I'm very like, I don't know, someone had pointed this out and maybe I had said it in passing, but I feel like I never made this like a big push. There are certain things I've repeated quite a bit. Like I have sensitive eyelids. Like, if you've seen a few of our stuff, this element, right? Which I haven't had any issues with my eyelids in like 2 years, but it's still like a thing that's part of my personality. But someone had mentioned in the comments, like when we had done the hair identifier spray video, that took a lot for Dr. Shah to do because he hates aerosolized products and breathing them in, which is a very nuanced thing because like I really, truly, really, truly, truly hate aerosolized products. Like, you don't understand. Like when my wife uses hairspray, like I will leave the room. I really, really hate breathing in aerosolized products. And so anytime I'm spraying something that's aerosolized, I will like hold my breath and then spray and then walk a distance to get away from the fumes. So like this is how much I'm against breathing this in. But I still will use spray on things. I just the way I do it, I'm very like meticulous about not breathing in. It's because, honestly, this actually comes from like a weird paranoia because I was a radiology resident before I switched to derm, and I would look at all these like CT scans and X-rays, but mostly high resolution CAT scan images of people with interstitial lung disease that would suffer from really terrible impairment of the lungs from breathing in, usually occupationally, like somebody worked in, a factory where they breathed in a lot of chemicals, and it basically just like fibrosis essentially destroys your lungs, making it very difficult to breathe. And a lot of times it's irreversible. And so anyway, I became very paranoid about like occupational lung injury, probably overly paranoid, like it's probably super low risk. And I'm just out here like super worried about it. But, it's like one of those things where your life biases leads to this. But someone had picked this up in the comments. Like they're like, oh, like Dr. Shaw must have hated doing this. And it's so true. I did. I literally did hate doing it. So it's so interesting that someone picked up on that nuance. So anyway, like the idea of whole body deodorant, because it's like this sort of aerosolized spray product. I just hate the concept of it for that reason. And then the second reason, and that's just that's like my personal hate for it. And then, but then we had talked about like, if you actually read like the product's packaging, it says apply to like the hot spots, which we always recommend, like armpits, groin, feet, the areas that are kind of smellier. I would never apply a product like this all over the body. Like I don't understand like why you would want to just spray it over your entire surface area, but I can see the benefit of applying your deodorants to the hot spots. So I'm for that, but I'm against whole body, the concept of whole body.
Yeah, and I think too, the third thing we've talked about was like a lot of these, not all of them, some of them are functional, but a lot of these literally are fragrance and alcohol. Like the top two ingredients, fragrance and alcohol, and that's like the vast majority of the product. And so, I mean, for me, that was. I mean, I like, and I'm not. I promote fragrance products. I always caveat like if you have eczema or sensitive skin, do not buy it whenever possible. But like, it's alcohol. It's literally alcohol, water, and fragrance. And I just think it misses the mark. I did like that it brought the discussion to people who had something like smelly feet or like HS or pitted keratolysis or these conditions where they do have odor in areas that didn't have attention before, because I think it at least brought attention for them to, oh, hey, there might be a solution for this. Like I think we talked about Secret or Sure. One of those two has like a lactic acid not antiperspirant, lactic acid deodorant that could be helpful in those areas. But same thing, you could use your traditional antiperspirant or deodorant in those areas from years ago and have similar benefits for a lot of these things.
Right. And I think actually this is like a consumer miss in some extent, because like, I just don't think that most people want to do that, like spray something all over the body. That's just my estimation. I don't know. Like maybe there was good consumer data to like push it so hard, because there were huge campaigns around this to get this out there. I just don't think it's a behavior most people would adopt. I guess you could find out in the comments, whole body deodorant, something you're interested in or not. Idea of applying something to the entire body, interested or not. That's a question.
This is a good question. Yeah, let us know what you think. Yeah, I have a hard time imagining anyone to apply anything over their body, even if for fear of absorption. But next up, perhaps something extremely practical but overhyped is hypochlorous acid. Finally had its moment in 2024. Crash.
It'll go. It keep going. Yeah, it's going to keep going. It'll normalize, I think, this year. Where people will, integrate it into their routines. In fact, it might decline slightly just because, like, I think people are using it that don't need it. And somebody had commented when we talked about hypochlorous acid as the best ingredient of the year. I got a DM from one of the people who watched the content, and he said, given that hypochlorous acid is an antiseptic, is there no concern of disrupting your skin microbiome, which we've talked in detail on the podcast, but we didn't do that on YouTube. And he was like concerned about this, and he's like, is there a room, if you're using hypochlorous acid, to add a probiotic into your routine? to kind of balance out that disruption of your skin microbiome. And I was like, touche, exactly how I think about these things. So I think it's going to scale back a bit as, people realize it's not integral to most people's skincare routine. I have actually recently become an adopter since hanging out with you, because now I spray it on everything. I went on a trip to LA and then New York, and I literally was spraying everything I came in contact with. We had somebody stay over who was sick, and she was coughing everywhere, and I was spraying everything she touched. Because the thing about hypochlorous acid is that it's like fabric safe, and it's safe to spray in the face. And so, as an antiseptic, I've been using it as like my go-to hand sanitizer, and that's actually encouraged. That was influenced by you.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad I've had at least some sort of positive impact in your life. I do think it's here to stay. I think this is going to be quieter. I think this has been adopted into something that's more of like a habit for people as opposed to a flashy display type of step. So I think people will quietly continue to use this personally. And the sales, I think, inevitably will go down, but I think it is here to stay. Next up, we only got 2 more, so hang with us. But beef tallow is next.
Beef tallow, rubbing beef goo on your face. I don't know. I mean, people are swearing by it. I think it's going to level out. I don't think it's going to become like more popular, because this is one of those things that benefited from like TikTok and TikTok Shop, because there were all these sellers that were promoting it and pushing it out there. And because of that, there were people incentivized to continue to push it out there. I think it's going to kind of normalize. People still seem to swear by it. I see it even pop up in a lot of our comment sections where people will be like, I just use beef tallow and it's great. So I think that some people have some really positive personal experiences with this. I personally wouldn't do it. However, it probably has some good fatty acids. Wouldn't be the end of the world if you rubbed it on your face, but it's not going to be adopted by me. And it's probably going to normalize or decrease slightly next year.
Nice. I think so too. I think this may have staying power in that community that is not necessarily our community. Like not there's not overlap. Like if you take a look at the Venn diagram that you love, like circle upon circle upon circle, and what circle meets what oval crescent meets in the middle, there is some overlap, but this is going to be probably more or have more longevity in the space of like the anti-sunscreen, the castor oil crew. Like I think that space is where this is going to live on perpetually. Let's see the last one. Not necessarily skincare related, but I personally absolutely love it. It's loathe. Let me make it clear for those who didn't enunciate loathe, not love. But face taping. Face taping. There are 2 ways to do this. One is the taping for wrinkles. I don't really care. Like, I don't feel strongly about that.
Say there's 2 ways to do this, as if there's like any proper way to tape your face.
And the second way is the mouth taping. And I know it's not face taping, but mouth taping. Wildly popular this year.
No. I'm against any of these things. The interesting thing about like, I don't know the research on like, the whole concept of like mouth taping is that like mouth breathers have some type of like major issues. And I honestly don't know the science behind that. So I can't like comment and say that there is no benefit to breathing through your nose over your mouth at night. It's just not something I'm going to do. Plus the tape's not going to stick to my beard anyway. So
there's that. Yeah.
It's not a plausible thing.
I will say, and there's probably a better way to say this, I think God gave us 2 holes for a reason. I am fairly certain, like, I don't know, I'm definitely scared, like, personally and professionally, of suffocating from a stuffy nose if I tape my mouth shut. I don't know. Like, we have a backup hole, and I am certain it's functional. Like, we need
fair. That is fair. I'm not going to comment on your language there, but yeah, I think it's a good guess there. So
yeah. Also, like the people who claim it for obstructive sleep apnea, like scientifically, it has like the opposite effect. You like don't quite understand the point and how a CPAP machine works and how closing your mouth when you breathe works. It's like the opposite effect. Anyway. That actually rounds out the list. Put down on your comments or our comments, like which ones would you like to see continue on? I would like the masks to continue on personally. Which ones would you like to see go away? And then we'll see what happens in 2025.
All right, let's get into the next article. This is about Lindsay Lohan, and it's coming out of Cosmopolitan. And the headline here was, "Why does Lindsay Lohan look so good?" And then they changed the headline when you actually click into the article, and it says, "The internet is convinced Lindsay Lohan got a facelift, but the experts I interviewed aren't so sure." And we've talked about this before. Okay, so this always happens, right? Something happens to some type of public figure, usually a celebrity. They look different. People haven't seen them in a while, and people start to speculate on what they did. And everyone kind of jumps in on this. And I think I've told my story in the past where I said that I did the same thing when Zac Efron posted, and then I felt like this kind of icky, and I took it down after like 24 hours. And it's just like not something I want to like participate in. But sometimes these moments can be like a good time to like have a discussion about something. Just like Chadwick Boseman, like he lost a lot of weight. Everyone's like, oh, this guy on drugs. Like, what is he? And then, he ends up having colon cancer. And I think it's just not like you don't know what's going on in somebody's life. And so, commenting on that, and whether it's good or bad, like it's never like really, good to speculate. Now, this is one of the first times where a celebrity has come out looking better than they have previously. And like everybody agrees that they somehow are looking healthier than ever before, and are like, what did they get done? They look phenomenal, right? So this is actually one of the rare times where it's not like a very critical assessment of a celebrity. So, and I actually like before this was like trending in the news, I saw this Lindsay Lohan movie that just came out. I don't know, it's like on Netflix. My wife watches like every Christmas movie that comes out. Like all like the Hallmark type of movies. I don't know what the name of this movie is on Netflix, but it came up as like a trending one on Netflix. She clicked into it, and I'm like, yo, is that Lindsay Lohan? Like, she looks so healthy. She looks so healthy right now. Like, because Lindsay Lohan, I believe, had gone through like a really rough time, and then she moved to Dubai. The interesting thing about Dubai, a lot of people don't know about this, is that it's illegal to take. So paparazzi is illegal in Dubai. If you take a picture of somebody without their consent and post it online, you will get arrested and get kicked out of the country. And so essentially, it's turned into a place where celebrities who are constantly harassed, like a Lindsay Lohan, can kind of like go and actually be safe, relatively safe, and free of harassment to the best extent possible, right? Because otherwise, like if you're like in Hollywood, like you're just gonna you can't even like breathe without them like all over you, right? So, she's been in Dubai for a while, and she's in this most recent movie, and she really does truly look healthier. And so I want to talk about this because I do think that is the aesthetic that people are now really going for. Like there was a point where people really did want to have the duck lips and really have the overfilled faces, and these trends kind of come and go. But I do think that like subtle being like the new dramatic, or that, the concept of like looking healthy without anyone knowing what you have done is the 2025 aesthetic that everyone is going for. And so my question to you, Dr. Maxfield, is how does somebody who wants this aesthetic, not commenting on what Lindsay Lohan had got done, because I have no idea what she got done, but how do you achieve this aesthetic? Because this is what we do in the office every day. This is what dermatologists do every day. And she actually credits her dermatologist for this outcome. But how does one achieve this level of healthy aging?
So I'm looking at her images now, and I will say, kind of open it, like that's always been my take. So when I talk to patients about cosmetics, there's a lot of things I don't do, and there's certain looks I would not perform. And my take is always this: like, I think a successful cosmetic procedure is one where if someone looks at you, they say, "Oh wow, she looks good, he looks good," but they can't figure out why. And a failure is when they would look at you and say, "Oh wow, her lips look good," knowing that she had her lips done. That's always been my personal take. I know we're both always have kind of been more fans on the subtle, like healthy appearance. Looking at her now, it is subtle. So I think it all starts as best as possible with prevention. So I kind of sum up what I see with her face. And again, we're not speculating about what she had done. It's just how do you achieve something similar? The features are relatively uniform, like she's proportionate. This is something I would expect to see someone who kind of just takes care of themselves as they approach their 40s. And I think she's 38 now. There's no exaggerated features. Like so it's starting from like a skin standpoint, protection, sunscreen, something that's going to help even out tone, kind of that same foundational thing we always talk about. If you add exfoliators, that'll help if you need it. Her lines are subtle. Actually, I don't have enough movement of her face to talk about Botox, but I'm going to double down on this next year. Like, I'm going to be vilified and open to it, but Botox is irreplaceable. And in my opinion, I think is probably one of the greatest ingredients ever done, because you can have subtle Botox. And I'm sure that could be a part of someone who's going for a subtle look where the lines are subtle and dampened as you approach 40s, 50s, 60s. So I would say just a foundational protective regimen, good topical routine. I think actually living a healthy lifestyle in terms of eating, exercise plays a huge role into a facial structure like this. Like even for myself, like we talk about my personal experience, because it's probably the most appropriate way to do it. Like when I am eating poorly, my face is bloated, I feel bad, like eye bags become more prominent, like the skin for me, especially those with rosacea, can become more oily. And so having that whole healthy dynamic from the inside out, I think actually gives you like a nice glow, albeit unquantifiable. And I think it does create like a nice healthy structure on your face too, where the small things that you couldn't really describe just look right. And then also finding a way to do procedures like chemical peels and lasers and Botox. Chemical peels and lasers. Chemical peels, lasers, Botox. If you wanted subtle, nuanced, but perceivable and appreciable results, those are 3 things you could anchor on, and it would go a long way.
So there's just one cosmetic procedure that is conspicuously missing from that list. It's really filler.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really filler that you're excluding from this, where
yeah.
I do think, but the other point is, yeah. So I mean, like, I'm 100% with you on this. It really is achieved through Botox, lasers, and chemical peels, where you can really have dramatic results in the health of your skin, and really just have no one know what you had done. Your skin just looks tighter. It looks healthier. It's got less sun damage. Like, that's what these procedures do. These are the procedures that dermatologists are mostly doing on themselves, to be honest. And obviously supporting it with a foundational skincare routine of sunscreen and some type of retinoid. Now, I think if you do those things, right, you really can age in a healthy way where people will look, wow, your skin looks very healthy. But I cannot understate what I've realized as somebody who now is getting closer to 40. And I guess Lindsay Lohan and us are nearly the same age, let's just say. And I do think that lifestyle heavily wears on you once you get above 30, 35. Where if you eat too much salt, you eat too much sugar, you don't sleep enough, in general, just don't take care of your health from the inside, it will start to show on your skin as well. So I think all in all of these things like make a huge difference. And so in order to have this sort of appearance, I think that a lot of us want, it is some of the procedures in the office. It is a really foundational skincare routine, but it's also the lifestyle. So I agree with you 100%.
Nice. So yeah, and I think that is interesting because it is probably more appreciable as you approach 40 how important and impactful these things are. But I'll still stand by like those decisions you make in your 20s and 30s, like especially if you exercise, you kind of like develop this body habitus, face included, that sticks with you, like carries on, even if you do take a prolonged break from exercise. Like Dr. Shah had biceps well into his early and mid 30s that may not have been warranted, but because of the sweat equity he put on earlier in life, he still looked athletic. So
I have an athletic build, let's say, but I am by no means athletic and in no means good shape. But yeah, like I do have muscle memory from my days of working out that
it exists.
Has paid dividends, despite probably the fact that, all types of fat is accumulating on my organs as we speak. So no, appreciate that. All right, let's go on to the next thing, the Inkey list versus the ordinary, which is better. And I was a little annoyed by this article, I'm not going to lie. And the reason why is because like I read through it and it's very long with a lot of product placement, which I feel like all of these trade articles now, this one's coming out of Cosmo, this is what they've essentially become, is just like tons of product recommendations and like just ads all over the sidelines and pop-ups everywhere. And it's just like a really frustrating scroll. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but it's become almost like a lot of these, like, no, and Cosmo is a great, publication, and they put together some great work. But, and this is not like a knock on Cosmo itself, but in general, like these magazines or whatever you call them, digital publications, have become like unreadable due to the format in my mind. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to extract what you came to the article for, right? Like, I came to the article to find a comparison between the two lines. And what I essentially got was a ton of product placements, a bunch of pop-ups, and like read the last paragraph, got to the last paragraph after an hour. And it basically was like, it's up to you to decide which is best for you, and here are the differences, essentially. So it didn't even like give me the intended answer, which was frustrating. So um what do you think is a better line? Do you have an
So
opinion?
I kind of do have an opinion, and so where these are similar is they're both very simple, often single ingredient kind of focused products, and they're both very affordable relative to what else is going on in skincare. That's what they have in common. I think, and I'm just reviewing the Inkey List's product line now, I think a distinguishing feature is The Ordinary is always pushing the limits for new ingredients. And I think that very clearly sets them apart in terms of, if you're looking for something cutting edge, affordable, you would probably go with The Ordinary. I think if you're someone who is new to skincare and just trying to get an affordable starting routine, I would say the Inkey List. And I think it's a pretty clear cut distinction between those two and who it would be best for. I do wish the Inkey List had a little bit more love. I actually like their products. I think we've talked about this before. I don't think I like their packaging necessarily, but the products are fine. They're affordable. I would certainly recommend them to most people starting out in skincare. But I do think the Ordinary does have a lot more depth for someone who's like a acquisitive, like a person who is like, this kind of scholastic, wants to engage in skincare a little more. They can go down a rabbit trail with the Ordinary looking for something unique and interesting.
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting assessment. They're both sort of these single ingredient brands. I do think that Inkey kind of switched to a little bit more complex formulation
They did.
before the Ordinary did. And, I think Ordinary like stayed on the single ingredients for a bit longer. And now is starting to come out with more complex formulations. But I agree. I think that Ordinary pushes the limits a bit more. Like, they'll bring a new ingredient to market that no one's like really thinking about, and like put a lot of credence in it, put a lot of science behind it. I do think though that a lot of the audience who came into skincare learning about the Ordinary and the Inkey List is maturing into
Mm,
wanting products that do more for them. So I do think that if that was your gateway into skincare, was like learning about niacinamide, buying the Ordinary's niacinamide or the Inkey's niacinamide, and then going, well, I just would rather get my niacinamide in a more complex product. I think that metamorphosis is happening, and these brands are going to have to figure out how they navigate a world like that. And I've also noticed that the Ordinary's prices are like slowly creeping upward.
they
From when
are.
we not slowly, actually, rapidly creeping upwards ever since Estee Lauder acquired them.
Yeah, I would
So,
say doubled at this point for most of their product line and especially new launches. The Inkey is still, I mean, under $15 for almost everything. So yeah, good call with
yeah.
the price.
But you're right. I don't think that the Inkey List pushes the limits very often, but is a little bit of an easier line to navigate. Like, they don't have 12 different retinoids or 17 different versions of vitamin C that you have to choose from. They just have like
Mm-hmm.
one vitamin C, or like it's more pared down, let's say. So yeah, beginners, I would say Inkey. I would say the Ordinary for somebody who wants like a little bit more of an elevated aesthetic, and something that it's got some more like innovative ingredients. But I do think that a lot of their core customer is going to move on from both of these brands until they kind of try to define like what the next stage of innovation looks for them, whether it's, I don't know what it's going to be for them. I think the Ordinary has a clearer path forward in my mind, because they can continue to lean into like innovation and the aesthetic of their innovation while still remaining relatively affordable. Whereas I think the Anki List given the fact that they didn't really bring much innovation into the market, I think it's going to be a more difficult path for them to chart forward.
Mm.
But I think both are great brands, and they'll kind of find their way.
Yeah, and I think kind of like you mentioned, it's interesting too because at first it was every ingredient felt new for most people because everyone was kind of learning together as the skincare trend blew up. And then once people kind of mastered that knowledge, especially as they kind of aged with it, then they started looking for more complex formulas because they could navigate the complexity with relative ease. And so now that everyone's kind of living in that space, it's hard to go backwards and justify like the multi-step, multi-product routine when you really feel comfortable with the one product, one step routine with all the same ingredients. And from a cost standpoint, it's almost, I mean, unless you're doing something wrong, but like if you shop right, it's almost more affordable to use those consolidated products every time for a routine too. So the cost benefit becomes more negligible as you increase the complexity sometimes.
Right. So as the ordinary's prices go up, and the fact that you need 3 or 4 to accomplish your goal, now you're actually like kind of net negative compared to like a
Mm-hmm.
masstige brand that's a little bit more complicated. So we'll kind of see what happens to 2025. I don't expect those brands to make any major headway unless they try to reinvent themselves to some extent. Now let's finally wrap this up with the countries with the longest work hours. Are you in the number one country, or are you in the lowest working country? So, um, what is the longest work hours in the world? Which country has this?
So this is India. And let's put a number on it because so this article is interesting to me because I was surprised both ways, meaning that like the highest hours worked in being India, perhaps is not super surprising, with like the cultural emphasis on like achievements and work that I feel like is fairly public coming from that country. And shout out to Gukesh for winning the World Chess Championship over Ding Liren, by the way, on that note. But the quantifier I think that was interesting was 56. And 56 hours a week is the average work week. And keep in mind, as we talk about this, this is through the lens of a doctor. This is the lens of someone who's gone through residency. And that's why I found this particular interesting. So 56, India, most hours worked in the world as a country on average.
Yeah. So let's kind of read the longest. I'm going to read the top 10 for you just so that, it's more inclusive. So top 10 most worked, India number 1 by a lot, like kind of a landslide to some extent, because Bhutan is number 2 at 53, and then
Mm-hmm.
Bangladesh is number 3 at 50 hours. So that's like a 10% variation between the third and the first, right? So India actually is like working the most by far to some extent. Well, I consider that like it's a whole extra day essentially, right? Another 6 hours. And then, then it's Bangladesh, Uganda, Cambodia, Pakistan, Sudan, UAE, and Jordan and Zimbabwe. Surprised about UAE, given that, the Emirates is a large commodity based economy, which has changed a bit, but I'm surprised it's as high as it is. But regardless, that's the top 10 for the most worked, and then the top 10 for the least worked is Finland. So number 1 least worked is the Netherlands at 29 or almost 30 hours. Rwanda, Iraq, Austria, Denmark, Norway, Germany, and Finland at 33 hours. So the interesting thing is the top, India, 56 hours, the least worked, Netherlands at 29.8. So people in India work on average almost double what somebody in the Netherlands on average is going to work.
Yeah, that is.
And for those of who are wondering, United States falls at about 38 hours. So kind of like middle of the pack, but still a little bit on the lower end of the middle of the pack.
Yeah, and that was surprising to me too. 38 hours per week compared to 33 hours a week, which is where most of the lower countries fall. 5 hours a week. That is almost a full day, like a half day of work for some people. So, it's not like it would be unfelt if we were the lowest or became the lowest hours per week. Like people would probably be able to appreciate that time back. But we're not nearly as far from it as I would have thought. I actually would have thought we work more collectively as a country. Now, yeah, I don't know. So I think it's funny too, because again, like I highlighted that this is through the lens of a doctor who's gone through residency. And so recently, within the last, 10 years, was it? Maybe 15, like they put an hour cap on residents to 80 hours per week. And for those of you who don't know, residency lasts anywhere from 3 to like now 9 years for general surgeons, which that's a crime, by the way. You can pay general surgeons 7 figures a year and they're still underpaid for what they go through. So just shout out all the surgeons in the world. But now, we went through, quite a while between our respective residencies and switches of 50-hour work weeks, 60-hour work weeks. Like I logged unofficially way more than 80, and I know what it feels like. And the interesting thing is, I've described this to my wife as like my perception of time has changed. I do not think of time in terms of days irreversibly since that. And I think because of this, like you and I have quite an appetite for work, seemingly inexhaustible. Like now, that same thing, like 40 hours to us, we're way past that, I think, just based off of what we do. And we love it. We love it. But because of that, going through residency in that time, for me, I don't think of anything in terms of days. I think in things in terms of tasks and completion. And so, like, I will not stop until something is complete. Like, I can go on for quite a bit. And I've also found a way to enjoy the work regardless of the task, because in residency, it's such a brutal grind, like not sleeping for 30 hours and then rounding in the morning to see patients after 30 hours of being active and awake. That's really tough, especially doing that for a prolonged period of time. Like that felt bad. But there is something to be said about coming out through the other side of it, where, like, I don't know. I just feel like that being a part of the journey helped me appreciate the journey of life more, because if you can't find a way to enjoy those moments and enjoy like the struggles of walking through something like that, even in the midst of it, you'll probably struggle in any aspect. Conversely, if you do figure out a way to enjoy that journey and enjoy those moments that are specifically hard to do, now, most tasks, like I'm very happy, like throughout the day, like I like the work for the sake of the work. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. This kind of a reflective moment as we close out the year. I probably need to err on the side of working less these days. In fact, I'm told that quite often, so I need to probably listen and lean into it. But through that, there's something beautiful about being able to enjoy the journey and the work itself, even in the absence of like completing it. Like I just am thankful for the opportunity to work and to do it alongside people that I care about quite a lot. So I don't know, that turned into like a soliloquy and a monologue of appreciation.
No, it's interesting. I'm just reflecting quite a bit on a lot of the statements that you're making. I do think in residency, like most residents are working on average probably about 60, where there's quite a few residencies, like my wife's OBGYN residency, where they were working well over 80 hours a week, every week for 4 years, right? And I think that once you get out of that, anything seems better, right? So then when you're working 40 hours, it feels like you're not working that much. Like, it's like, whoa, I got like all this time back, right? Like I had all this time that I was dedicated to residency, and then I get out and now I'm working 40 hours or 50 hours. And it feels like I have just so much time back in my schedule.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what it felt like, because everything is always comparative to whatever your benchmark reference point is. So if your reference point is working 30 hours a week and then now you got to work 35, like it feels like you're going to be stretched, right? So, to what you're able to bear oftentimes is based on what you've been trained to bear, essentially, like whatever load you're able to carry, right? But it's kind of like, like if you were lifting a 50-pound weight every day, for forever, and then you lost that 50-pound weight, like it would suddenly feel like you're so much lighter on your feet, right? So it's whatever it is, I mean, I think it is comparative to whatever you're used to, whatever your reference point is. I do think that there is an overemphasis on work here, and the saying essentially goes, your job is going to replace you like the moment you're gone, right? But so you should spend more time with your family and things like this. So I am kind of like at that point where I'm like, where's the benefit? But there is, I think you and I both have had the luxury, I would say, of finding a job that we truly
Mm.
enjoy. Like, and that's like every aspect of what we do. And we talk about this all the time, where it's like, I love seeing patients in clinic. I love doing content on social. I love making educational videos on YouTube. I love building Remedy. I mean, it's one of the most gratifying things that I've ever done, seeing the reviews come in. So I'm a very like passion driven, you're a very passion driven, a very like project driven, results driven individual. And you extract a lot of joy from the actual work that you do, to the point where I would genuinely consider this not work for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Me
Like,
too.
I like essentially this would be like my hobby, because like I don't have other hobbies. Like, which is like, I don't know, people think it's a bad thing, but like I do enjoy it. But I do think it's a rare thing. And that's after talking to like people across the scope of everything, and many other doctors, they don't feel the same way about the work. And so in that framework, and just talking to people, for those people, a 30-hour work week is too long because they hate being there.
Mm.
Imagine hating being somewhere for 30 hours, right? So whether it's 30 hours or 50 hours, if you hate what you do, every hour feels like too long of an hour. So I guess my advice, I guess I would give to people is like, find something that you love if you can. And if you can't, make a living off of something you love, then you do have to find ways to find enjoyment in the things outside of work and try to work less ultimately. And then I also would like fragment this into kind of like two things, where it's like, you can work 50 hours doing something that's more like systematic in a way, but I think that you would see a big drop off like in creative fields, or
Mm-hmm.
fields that require like more analysis, I would say. Like, there's not like necessarily like a right or wrong answer to something. It's not very mechanical, the field. I think that the less you work, the actual more productive you would be, to some extent, because I do think creativity wanes as you overwork yourself, and so you actually become less efficient. So I don't know. I mean, that all to say is that I think it's actually very nuanced, like the work. And we do both collectively probably work more than 60 hours a week on average. But I honestly genuinely wouldn't consider it to be work. And I actually think that is probably the greatest privilege of what we've been able to do. Because I do recognize, because I just came back from a wedding, a doctor colleague from residency when I was a radiology resident, where like not everybody feels the same way, right? Like, for a lot of people, like the job is a means to an end, right? And not necessarily like an end in of itself, right? Or a journey in and of itself, right? It's like seen as almost like an obligation to get through the day. So I do think we're privileged in that way. I am surprised the US isn't higher on them, because we like sort of like pride ourselves on being like the hardest working people. So I expected us to kind of come higher on the spectrum. But I'm sort of a proponent of like the 4 day work week, to be honest. Because I do think you shouldn't work more than you don't work if you don't enjoy your job. I don't know, but I also think you should enjoy your job. It's really nuanced, because like I would work more if my wife would allow me to be honest, because I actually like enjoy it that much. But I
So
could understand that like if you didn't enjoy your job, like you really shouldn't spend your whole life doing it either. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Like,
Oh yeah, and then, like
yeah,
we'll talk about this more at length, but like we came from a position of like very little, and like this has never not been the story of like our lives forever, right? So I would say then, as a challenge to the 2025 year, because this is the lesson I learned myself, is like it takes a lot of not courage, sometimes almost just necessity, pressure to take a leap and get past that initial hump, that inertia that's keeping you where you're at. So if you don't like something about your life, and right now we're just talking about jobs, I highly recommend thinking about it thoroughly, spending some time with yourself and envisioning where would you like your life to be 5 years from now. Because if you make no changes, your life trajectory is exactly going to be what it looks like today, just 5 years further in your aging journey. And if you don't like that, try to figure out what you would like it to look like and make a small change, just a small thing, one tiny thing to help you get there. Because for me, that was probably one of the greatest changes in my life, is when I became fearless out of necessity, to where I like took a jump and like risked it all. Like I was all in on making a change in my life. And for me, it planned out well. I think actually for most people, it pans out well, believe it or not.
I 100% agree. I mean, bet on yourself, take a risk. If you're not happy where you see yourself, like, I understand, like, and trust me, Dr. Maxfield, I understand as well as anybody else that it's not as easy. Like, there are obligations you have, there are debts you have, there are family members you have to take care of. And sometimes you are the sole provider for these people. So being like, I'm going to quit my job and do the thing I'm passionate about tomorrow is sometimes not realistic. But there is a way sort of out of it. And it requires like taking risk and recognizing that you don't want that future and you're going to plan for it, whether it's in the hours that you're not working, whether it means that you're going to take a leap in the job that you're at. But there are ways essentially to escape like where you are and make the right choices for yourself. And a lot of times I can chalk up like, me finding this happiness that I've found nowadays as me finding a scenario that I was in that I was unhappy, like as a radiology resident, and taking a massive leap to essentially change my whole life. And those who come from medicine will sort of understand this. Like, to switch specialties is a massive life switch and a very risky switch too. You could lose everything essentially that you've built that far up, and it had been 9 years in for me at that point. But you took the risk, and then you find what you love, and it's worth it in the end. So I do think it requires some degree of risk, but not obviously to the point where you just kind of throw everything away. And I was smiling a little bit because you don't know this, but I'm wearing this shirt from this brand ASRV that I've been telling you about. And you can't see this, but the shirt says, "Only those who risk are free."
Ooh.
So that right there is the message for the year, for 2025, for everybody.
It is.
And I close this out with, only those who risk are free. And I believe that actually to be very true. Thank you all so much for an incredible year through the podcast. You all have been incredibly amazing. I read all of your comments because they're so thoughtful and inspired. And I hope you all have an incredible end of the year, an incredible happy holidays. And would love to hear from you what your major wins were for the year and what your plans are for next year. And we'll see you next time.
All right. We will see y'all in the next season.
All right.